It worked!
It's not magic, it's science.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of iScience with Dr. White, coming to you from the CEC studios. All the pressure of making this show has driven me batty. Today, we're diving deep into the world of bats, those incredible creatures that flutter through the night sky. Did you know that Georgia is home to a whopping 16 species of bats? That's right, these flying mammals play a crucial role in our local ecosystem. Bats are not only fascinating, but also incredibly valuable. They help us by feasting on flying insects like mosquitoes, which are pesky and often carry diseases. Just one bat can munch down hundreds of mosquitoes in just 1 hour. They also help our farmers by munching on moths and beetles that can damage crops. So bats are truly our unsung heroes. Today we've got a special guest, a local bat expert who'll be joining us to discuss these amazing creatures. She's even bringing an Egyptian fruit bat with her, and we'll explore their incredible adaptations to different habitats. This is Norma Lewis. She's the director of the Bear Creek Nature Center in Chattahoochee Hills, Georgia. Hi, Norma.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me.
So who have you brought with us?
I have Mango and Pommy, who are two of our resident flying foxes or Egyptian fruit bats. So this is Mango.
Hello, Mango. Welcome to the show. Welcome to iScience. They live in Africa and they've got ranges in other areas as well. So what kind of things do they eat?
They primarily like really, really ripe fruits. Mostly when we talk about fruit bats, we think about bats that live up in trees and hang out in the open. Egyptian fruit bats are a little unusual in that they like to live in dark, tight places. So these guys are also called tomb bats because they live in Egyptian tombs, in caves, and things like that. And as a result, these guys actually use an echolocation. They use tongue clicks to listen to what's around them to find their way out of those tight spaces. And then they use their eyes and their noses to find their fruit.
Can you compare the Egyptian fruit bat to the bats we find here in Georgia?
These are called megabats. Megabats are all old world fruit bats. Our native bats are microbats. About 90% of the world's bats are microbats. Microbats are found all over the world. Megabats are old world fruit bats, so only in the old world. So if we look at his ears, but there's no tragus in the ear. Old world fruit bats do not have a tragus, the microbats do. All bats have wings that are the same. This is the upper arm, this is the forearm, this is the wrist, this is the thumb, pointer, middle, ring, and pinky fingers.
So the wing is actually the
wing
hand.
is actually a hand and arm, right? With
Fascinating.
a very thin skin. You can see my fingers right through that wing. 2 layers of skin thick. But you'll notice that there's a claw on the end of this first finger. So the old world fruit bats, the megabats, have a claw at the end of the first finger. Our microbats don't have that. You'll notice that he doesn't have what we call a tail membrane. He looks like he's wearing breeches.
So the feet net. The feet net is
right. We call it the interfemoral membrane because it goes from femur to femur, and with the tail in between. Our native bats use that often to catch insects as they're flying.
And since these guys don't
eat insects, so they don't need that.
Have to have it.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys can be pollinators because they're going to eat nectar as well as fruit. So they can be pollinators. There are bats that specialize in pollen and nectar. So if you go to the southwestern deserts in the United States, that's the only place where we have anything other than insectivorous bats. And those bats actually pollinate saguaro cactuses, the agave plants, aloe plants, things like that.
Can you give us some advice for the general population about interacting with bats, specifically in Georgia?
Absolutely. So we encourage the use of bat houses around our homes because that gives bats a place to live, and it provides homes and shelters so that bats can live near your house and help take care of some of your pests.
Are all bats pests?
Not at all. Bats are a very important part of our environment. Bats that live here in Georgia, they're all insect-eating bats. As a result, help control insects in our environment. Many of our bats tend to specialize. So big brown bats, for example, specialize more in beetles. Red bats like moths. That doesn't mean that either of them are going to turn up their noses at a mosquito should it come around, or some other species, but that's what they tend to like. So as a result, if you have garden pests that are Japanese beetles or things like that, the big brown bats are going to help control those. Same thing is true with horn borer moths and things like that. Then the red bats are going to be really important.
So bats are actually our friends.
Bats are definitely our friends.
What should we do if we encounter a bat that looks like it's in distress?
Here's the thing, never ever touch a bat. Never touch a bat barehanded. You always want to wear gloves or something like that. If you're a child, get an adult. There are ways to gather up a bat and help it without ever touching it.
Well, Mango, it is so nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on iScience today. So Norma, you've got some silhouettes of different types of bats here. So I'm going to start off with this little guy. What type of bat does this represent?
That is the Kitti's hog-nosed bat, or the bumblebee bat, and that is the world's smallest bat, and it weighs about as much as a dime. Not only is it the world's smallest bat, it's also the world's smallest mammal.
Wow. So bumblebee bat.
A bumblebee bat.
Now we've got this guy, which I have to say, this is the size of bat that I think of when I think of bats.
So this is an outline of our big brown bat, Aptesicus fuscus, which is our most common native bat right now. And the head's a little on the big side, but the wings were actually traced off of a live bat, so we know that they're pretty accurate size-wise. So when this bat's flying, it looks huge, wingspan of about 10 inches, but when it's at rest, I could hold one in my hand like this and you wouldn't even know it was in there.
So they're actually little guys.
They're actually little bats, and people, when they see them, they always think they're babies.
This is a Georgia bat.
That's a Georgia bat, right? That's the big brown.
And me being a Georgia guy, that explains why this is what I think of when I think of bats.
Right. This is the Malayan flying fox.
A flying fox.
A flying fox. So it's the same group of bats, the megabats, as the Egyptian fruit bats that we had. This is just the largest species. So the wingspan on this guy can be up to over 6 feet. Okay, it only weighs about 2 to 2.5 pounds though, because all of this is just arms.
Just arms
And fingers, hands, arms and hands and fingers. Yep.
What would this guy eat?
That definitely a fruit eater.
A fruit eater.
This is a fruit eating bat. It's one of the old world fruit bats or megabats.
Now, the scientific name of this bat
Is Pteropus vampirus.
Vampirus.
Right, because interestingly enough, every time they found a bat, they would name it after a vampire because, you know, Dracula turned into a bat. And then, by the time they discovered there actually were such things as vampire bats, they'd used up all the vampire names.
So this is a fruit bat.
This is a fruit bat.
Who's misnamed
yes.
as a vampire.
Right. So our vampire bats are named things like Desmodus rotundus. Yes.
So this guy only eats fruit, not blood.
Correct. It eats fruit. It'll eat a little bit of insect material that's in the really ripe fruit that it likes to eat.
I thought those were really fascinating to see the comparison between the two. So for our iScience fans here in Georgia, this is the bat that you probably see
most common
around Georgia. And these guys are definitely friends. I read somewhere that they can eat their body weight in insects
a night.
in one night. And the mosquitoes and bugs like that, they don't weigh anything. So
They eat a lot of bugs.
a lot of bugs. So we want to take care of our friends.
Yep, they'll feed a little bit in the evening, then they'll rest, and they'll come out again, then they'll rest, and then they do a last morning forage.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Norma, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your information about bats.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It was great fun.
Thank you for joining us today on iScience with Dr. White. Visit iScienceWithDrWhite.com for more videos and science resources. Stay curious, keep exploring, and always remember that it's not magic, it's science. See you next time. Since you're still here, you must be a teacher looking for tips on how to integrate this episode into your classroom. Don't worry, old Dr. White has you covered. For my elementary teacher colleagues, this episode is perfect for first grade, where you can discuss the basic needs of a bat as compared to other animals. Maybe you can even design a bat house as a STEM challenge. In second grade, you could focus on the life cycle of a bat or explain the bat's role in dispersing seeds and pollinating plants. In third grade, you could focus on the bats in the different regions of Georgia, their adaptations, and the threats pollution poses to bats and their habitat. In fourth grade, you could include bats in your exploration of food webs and how the impacts of humans can change a bat's ecosystem. In fifth grade, you might highlight how bats are classified and how characteristics of bats are passed from their parents to their offspring. You might even examine white nose syndrome, a fungal infection impacting bats in Georgia. If you're looking to incorporating some reading about bats, might I suggest books like Stella Luna by Janelle Cannon, or Good Night Bat, Good Morning Squirrel by Paul Mizell, or The Bat Book by Charlotte Milner. All of these are for elementary students. For my middle school colleagues, this episode connects well with lessons in 7th grade on classification, genetics, evolution, and ecology. In 8th grade, you could dive into the bat's use of sound waves and echolocation. For high school, bats make a great phenomenon to explore biodiversity, energy flow and cycling of matter, and diversity and speciation. For links to bat resources and lesson plans, see the links in the video description below or visit iSciencewithdrwhite.com.